right, up here at the top right as our Terran player, used to be one of the top Terrans in the world, is trying to get back to that status. Formerly known as NSP Fancy of the Brood War Team Eastro. Very cool guy. He's a very laid-back guy in general. Unless you ask him about his games, and then he's like super confident. I'm gonna win.
Well, his opponent is starting at the bottom left. The former TSL player. He left TSL. He doesn't have a team just yet. And talking a little bit about the statistics again, Killer in his matchup against Terran has 54% win ratio. He won 25 of his 46 matches. He lost 21 of them. And Bomber, on the other hand, is pretty good in the matchup against Protoss. He has 33 wins and 17 losses, which leaves him at 66% win ratio. So the statistics are in favor of Bomber, but as we all know, it comes down to the shape that you're in right now. And Molchap already elaborated a little bit on how Bomber had a hard time lately, but so did Killer. Killer was facing a lot of Protoss players in the last season, and this is by far his worst matchup. Now he's facing a Terran player, and he wants to start off with a win as well, obviously.
Obviously, indeed. And we were talking earlier about how Killer is going to struggle against Tassadar, so definitely wants to win in the matches that are his better matchup, as I was talking about at the beginning of the cast. But yeah, Bomber, I mean, it really is going to come down to the shape these guys are in. Bomber, at his top form, has the best Terran versus Protoss, or at least top couple Terran versus Protoss in the world. He's been really rusty lately, and so, you know, if he's been practicing a lot, if he's gotten back into that top form, and who knows what it is, sometimes it's just a mind thing where they just get a mental block where they can't play their top level. And if Bomber can get past that, he's definitely going to be the favorite for this game, but Killer, I think, has been doing a little bit better lately.
I remember a game that, well, Bomber played a game against Hazorps. It was already a couple of months ago, but I remember talking to Hazorps after that because he lost, and he was just frustrated. He told me, well, it doesn't really make sense. His attack timings don't make any sense, and that's why they work. And he was so frustrated about that. He just couldn't get his head around the strategies of Bomber. So we'll see if Bomber is actually able to pull something like that off again. We are in Crossfire, and the expansion is being built for Bomber right now. He's going for that command center, blocking the choke with his Marines. There's no way that Killer gets a decent read on that early on. And that's one of the main problems that you have as Protoss, obviously. You need some scouting information. Oh, is that Salad going to die? That's actually cutting it close.
Falls back. Zealot has a broken arm and he's going to have a scar on one of his legs for the rest of his life, though. Took a lot of damage there. Yeah, Killer, by the way, I was saying before, I think he's kind of the favorite here. I'm looking now a little bit more closely at his record. You know, he's been struggling a little bit lately, falling down to the up and down matches, what have you. But again, as we saw with kind of with Ryung having a problem with Protoss, Killer, he's been having problems mostly with other Protoss and with Zergs, but he's actually won 8 of his last games versus Terran. He's been beating players like Pult a lot, beating, let me look back at who it was. Oh, his SAV is going to get in and seize the expansion. Very important intelligence there for Bomber. But yeah, I mean, Killer's been beating players like Happy, Virus, Jokji, Pult, Ganji, Ryung. Actually, when they meet again later, it'll be a little bit of a rematch from the GSTL from the last couple seasons ago.
Killer actually scouted the gas of his opponent in the early stages of the game, and he's going for that expansion with only one gateway nonetheless. He knows that he'll be able to hold that off if his opponent is not going for a triple barracks play. So he's doing that quite well. And you can hold off a push with 2 barracks when you go for an early Nexus if you just make sure that you don't overextend to your pro production, if you have the gateways to back it up. You will get a little bit of damage on your Nexus. You will have to tank with a building, but as long as you wait and stall your opponent's attack a bit until you have enough units, you're fine. Doesn't really matter all that much in this particular game as Bomber is expanding as well, but Killer still needs to be careful.
Just going to see a nice macro game, at least for now. We could see either player go for some kind of 2-base strategy, of course, but no early pressure really being put on by either player. Probably going to see... Go ahead.
observers being built right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
he'll get a read on what's happening. I have to say that I was really amazed. I mentioned that in a couple of other casts that I've been casting Parting a lot last season. And Parting is one of the new Code S Protoss players. And in his matchup against Terran, he skips the Colossi, goes for the robotics nonetheless, but his area of effect spell that he's going for is Storm. So he's going more for the Templar tech. But at the same time, he's building about 4 to 6 observers that he positions around the map. And
really?
I really love that play because it's like having a map hack. He positions the observers everywhere. He doesn't fly around with them, so it's really hard for the Terran player to know where they are. And that is such a nice play. I would love Killer to do something similar, and I'm really eager to know how Parting is doing the next season against Terran in the Code
Yeah,
S.
that's really interesting. That's very uncharacteristic. We don't see players get that many observers usually. Usually they want their robo facility working to do other things.
Exactly.
They want to spend their gas on other things.
Yeah, but if you go for the Templar tech to deal with the bio ball, then you suddenly have all that spare time in the robotics. Killer is going for the usual robotics bait tech with the Colossi. He's not opting for Templar, so he will need that time in the robotics facility. He's getting just now one of the Immortals. I like that move as well. Immortals are pretty cool if you just add them to the army to give a little bit more of a support against Marauders.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that you target fire them though. In order for them to be most effective, because he's gonna have a lot of Marauders, but if that Immortal sits there firing at Marines, it's not going to be doing its full effective damage. It's going to be basically half the damage it could be to the enemy army. So you need to make sure you're using those wisely. We've seen battles happen where one player actually loses the battle they should have won because their Immortals are firing at drones instead of roaches, for instance.
Getting rid of the rocks at the back now. 2 Immortals by now. And as Legend, our observer, already pointed out, there is no concussive shell just yet for Bomber. Apparently he missed that upgrade. Finally he's started to research it. Combat Shield is finishing now too.
Observer, he does have 2 observers on the map. One is checking out the main, one is kind of sitting nearby the army so he knows if and when Bomber moves out.
Double Forge now for Killer. He wants to get those upgrades and getting ahead of a Bomber. That's one of the hardest things for Terran to deal with. At some point the Protoss player will have the lead in upgrades because they can't just chrono boost them, and usually on 2 to 3 bases the Protoss player will get a lot of upgrades and then be ahead at some point in the game. Will be on like 3-3 while the Terran player still has 2-2 going.
Yeah.
And that time the Terran player is most vulnerable to attacks of the Protoss player, especially if there are already Colossi with the extended lands upgrade.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that I think the fact that Bomber only has 1 eBay means that he's thinking more short term. And he might be pushing out for an attack, and he is in fact pushing out on the map at least. Doesn't appear to be looking to take an expansion. He's just trying to put some pressure on right now, and he does have a pretty large bio ball. He seems to have spotted the Colossus, though I don't know if he scanned or something, but he is starting to get some Vikings out, and he's going to wait for those Vikings before he goes for an actual attack.
And both players are really passive right now. It's more about the macro game, trying to get that army that can kill your opponent instantly. We have Bomber on 132 against 114 of Killer. Killer is now getting +1/+1. He will finish in time. Bomber just has the first attack upgrade being researched.
Random location for a starport. It's the middle of the map. Middle of that little walkway over to the possible 3rd base. Bomber, now he has a pretty good group of Vikings out now. Looks like 2, 3, a couple more joining them from behind. And he might be thinking about, well, no, it's not quite enough to deal with that many Colossus right now, actually.
Killer's lining up the Twilight Council perfectly with the +1/+1 upgrade, so that he can start with the second upgrades right after the first one finished.
I wonder if he's going to use that extra starport and get a tech lab and get some Banshees. Because right now Killer has almost no Stalkers. Well, let me actually check the unit tab and make sure they're not hiding.
He's just going for the Vikings.
He has just a few Stalkers on the map.
He's just getting more Vikings in order to deal with the Colossi faster.
Never mind then. Oh, there's several Stalkers. Okay, he's good.
And charging research first. Stim immediately. The force fields are being thrown down.
Oh!
And he needs to defend against those Vikings. A lot of them are trying to take the Colossi down. 3 are still alive, and Bomber is losing a lot in that encounter. He needs to stim again. Force fielding even more. Killer is dropping in supply. Bomber might be able to pull through after all. The Colossi are dead and gone unless he is able to pull some miracle attack on with the last one. He will lose that game as Bomber is now getting into the main base, and the warp-ins, only Zealots are dying to the Terran attack as well. This is looking very, very bad for Killer now.
This game is pretty much over now for Killer. His main has been breached, and there's almost no way he can go back to the Colossus, which may have been his salvation. Dies inside its robo, and the slash, what is that? Shoom. I'm not sure exactly what that means. It may have just been actually a misclick by Bomber. We're going to try and find that out for you in just a second. But Bomber destroying Killer's expansion. There's the GG from Killer. And Bomber with one decisive attack. And I like the way he came in with a flank on that little small ramp. So he actually was able to kill one of the Colossus with a few Marauders on the side of the battle, which gave him a little bit more of an edge going in the middle of that battle.
Killer is not too happy now.
And really curious what that was at the end when he was he typed something there.
Maybe a mistype at slash dance.
Yeah, maybe he's trying to slash dance. That might have been what he was trying to do. That's kind of funny. Anyway, so Bomber very decisively takes game number 1. One of the funnest kinds of games to watch, where both players do nothing until there's one battle and one player wins the battle. I love those. That was an exciting battle, though. A lot of stuff going on. And Killer, I think he probably could have played that battle out a little bit better. His first set of force fields didn't really do anything. And he wasn't doing as much as he could to keep the Vikings away from his Colossus. And it's just little stuff like that in a battle like that that can lose you the battle and the game. It also helped that Bomber did attack before the next set of double upgrades finished on those forges, so that was a nice timing as well.
The timing was very well done, and if he had allowed his opponent to get the +2/+2 upgrade, that would probably even have hit before the +1 armor upgrade would have been done for Bomber, so that would have been a huge lead in terms of upgrades, and the Killer was just not able to get all the tech that he wanted.
There you go.
Our next game is going to be Tassadar against Gumiho, by the way. Another Protoss versus Terran.
So I'm going to try and look that up, find out what that means. Yeah, this is going to be another interesting game. Tassadar is he's a guy who, for a minute there, it looked like he was going to be the next big Protoss. There he is on the left, by the way. And it's Hosa. And, you know, it looked like he was going to be the next big thing. He was going to get into Codas. He was going to be huge. He was going to do so well. And he got to the finals of his Code A tournament. The first season he was in Code A. And then he just kind of didn't really live up to all those expectations, got back down to Code A, and didn't really do too well in Code A for a couple seasons. Here he is in the up and down matches, though. This is kind of one of his... He's getting another chance to try and make it. Gumiho, he hasn't really accomplished a ton either, but I think he's seemed to be a little bit stronger in recent tournaments to me.
We'll find out soon enough if he's able to beat Tassadar. The Protoss versus Terran match that we are going to see in a few seconds will take place on Antigua Shipyard. That's the map for our third match, and we'll see who of those two players will start into the group with a win. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few seconds with the GSL up and down matches. I pull myself together again. I can't believe I can